Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. Now I have seen all over Pinterest and Facebook projects where people are using handwriting, and I think they are so cute. These are a couple of chalkboards that my mom wrote on several years ago, and I wanted to put this sign on a polyester potholder that I got from the Dollar Tree store. Now sometimes you're lucky enough to have handwriting that you can just convert in a program like Photoshop. You can adjust the curves, the brightness, convert it to black and white, things like that. But sometimes you're not lucky enough to have that. And in my case, I'm not. So I'm going to show you how I used Procreate, an app that you can get for your iPad. They also have a Procreate Pocket for the iPhone. I haven't used it, but that might be an option for you if you don't have an iPad. And then you also need to have an Apple Pencil or an alternative stylus that you can use. Now, at the end of the video, I will actually cut the traced handwriting from this sign out on Infusible Ink and put it on my potholder. But since I've already done that in Procreate, for this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use Procreate using this handwriting. So if you're in the first thing that I'm going to do in this process is take a picture of the writing that I want with my iPad. And I went ahead and took two just so I make sure I have one good quality picture. Now that I've taken my picture, I want to go ahead and bring that into Procreate. Now here's the Procreate app, so I'll go ahead and click on that. This is my gallery, and these are things that I've worked on, except for down here, these were already in the system. Some of these look really dark. That's just because on those, I've hidden the background. So to bring in that photo, I'm going to click right here on the word photo. And then here's what I want to bring in. I'll just choose the one on the right. It will import it, and then it'll put it on my canvas. In Procreate, two fingers are a great tool. You can turn things, you can make them smaller by pinching in, you can make them larger by pulling your fingers out. But for now, what I want to do is go to the Layers panel. So these two squares up here, you click on that, and I'm going to add a third layer. So far I have the background, I have my picture layer, and then I'm going to add a third layer. So I click on this plus sign, and the third layer will actually be the layer that shows my tracing. But before I start tracing, I want to change the opacity of the background. I want to make it a lot less. So I click on the layer, then with two fingers, I'll tap on the layer, and then my opacity sliding bar is right up here. Now you can do this with an Apple Pencil, but I have found it's easier if you just use your finger. So I'll take it down somewhere around right there. That really decreases the darkness of the background, so I think I'll be able to see my tracing better. Then I'm going to trace in blue. If you want to trace in a different color, you would tap whatever color is showing in the circle, and then you could just slide your little circle to whatever color you want. And then you can refine that with this little circle in here. And so whatever this is showing is the color you're going to get. But I really like to do it in blue. And I think that's because the first time I ever traced, I didn't even realize you could change colors, and I accidentally traced in blue. I changed it to black later, but you really don't even have to, because if you're using this in Cricut or a Glowforge, it doesn't matter what color it is. You just know you're going to cut it out. I'm happy with that color, so I'll click right here on my color circle. Now let's look at the layers again. Right now, if I were to write on this, I'd be writing on the same layer with my picture. So I'm going to change it so that I'm writing on layer 2. That way, after I'm done, I can hide that layer, and all you see is the beautiful tracing. So that's why we do it that way. All right, so we are on layer 2. I'm just going to click on my canvas. Now, the brush up here is where you determine what kind of brush you want to use to trace with. And you have all these types of brushes in your brush library, and then within each of these categories, you have a lot of options over on the right. For tracing, I go to inking and technical pen. And if I click on it again, Then I have a lot more refinements over here. I'm not going to mess with any of those except under stroke path. I want to make sure I have this streamlined up to about 70%. Let me show you what Streamline does. First of all, I'm just going to turn it all the way down. And then I'm going to make a little drawing here. And see how it's kind of wiggly and it looks like my hand shakes? That's probably because my hand does shake. But if I turn up the Streamline, watch the line smooth out. See how much more smooth that looks? That really helps me a lot. So I do recommend, if you have any issues with being a little bit jittery or lacking confidence in being able to trace very well, that you turn this Streamline up some. And that's the only thing I'm going to change. So I'll click on Done, click on my canvas, and I'm ready to start. Two more things though. Here's the eraser tool. If you don't, use 2 fingers to undo your last mistake. You can turn on the eraser tool and you can brush away the mistake you made. Number 2, there's a couple of sliders over here. This slider changes the opacity of your brush and it changes the opacity of your eraser. I just leave that at 100%. The top slider changes the size of your brush and the size of your eraser. And I adjust that during my project depending upon my needs. So I want to just see how wide my brush is right now. And that looks pretty good, but I think I'll go just a little bit thinner. So let me go all the way down, show you how really thin your brush can be. You can barely see that. And then if you take it to 100%, your brush is pretty thick. That's probably a little too thick for what I want. So I'll take this down. Let's see, where am I right now? I am at about, I think it said 52%. I'm just going to go a little bit less. I'm down to 20%, and that's where I'm going to stay. So I like to really blow this up so that I can see the details. One thing is, my mom wrote this with chalk, and this chalk has been on this for years, and so it's pretty smudgy. It doesn't look perfect. I'm not going to trace all the smudges. I'm going to trace her penmanship. So my final product is not going to look exactly like this. It's going to be a tracing of her handwriting. It's not going to trace all those smudges. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And I go back an awful lot because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. Sometimes I sweat the small stuff too much. Let me show you how I use the eraser quite often. See how I got a little wavy in that? I can take the eraser tool and I can make it a lot smaller so that this is really precise. And you can just start going back and forth to try to straighten it up. And you see how I did that? Let's turn it over and get rid of the little lump right here. Then it looks like I need to fill in a little bit, so I'll go back to my brush. And I'll just go down. Okay, we're going to call that good. I am just showing you this for demonstration purposes, and it's not going to be my best work. I just want to explain what I'm doing along the way. I did a recipe that I probably have up to about 3 hours in now, and that's that open face peach pie recipe. I am so excited to make that. I'm going to actually use my laser to engrave that into a cutting board. Now I'm just going to fast forward through most of this. If I find that there's something I'm doing along the way that I think that would be helpful, I'll go ahead and slow it down. I'm going to make this eraser bigger. I don't like that eye. But I'd already done this, so it was too late just to do 2 fingers. Now, for purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to call that good. I only took a few minutes to do this. If I really wanted to do a nice job, it's going to take quite a bit of time. But I just want to show you how the software works. So now what I can do, I can go to my layers and I can hide the original layer, and that's what it would look like. Now, to make it have a transparent background, I would also hide the background layer. Then I'm ready to go ahead and either save this to my iPad. Maybe I work with my Cricut on my iPad, so I could just save it to the iPad, but I actually use my laptop. So to move this to my laptop, I'm going to click on this little wrench, and then I want to save this as a PNG. So I'll click on PNG, and it gets it ready. It's sitting there, and it's asking me basically, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to save it? Do I want to send it to someone? In my case, I'm going to airdrop it to myself.
Even though the project I'm going to do tonight is using this file, Let's Make It a Great Day, I want to go ahead and show you the file that I brought in. When I airdrop files to myself, they go to my downloads. So I'm just going to click on Downloads, drag it to my desktop, and then just so I can find it easily, I'll call it Happy Birthday. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. If I wanted to use a Cricut pen and just have this written on a card, this would be fine. But to do Infusible Ink, it needs to be a little thicker. So what I'm going to do is open it in Inkscape. I can do a small offset and then it'll be perfect. So I click on File, Import. I found Happy Birthday, so I'll go ahead and bring that in. Now I just use these default import settings and I click OK. Now there's a step you have to take before you can add an offset to that. You go up here to Path and you click on Trace Bitmap. I just use the default settings here. I click OK. When I do that, you see a little preview. Now the quality of the preview, it doesn't look so good, but you just wait, it's going to be fine. So I click the X to go ahead and close this screen. Now there's 2 layers here. There's my old layer and there's my new layer. I can tell that the blue is my old layer and then my black is my new layer. If you've imported something black and you're not sure which is which, you can click on this nodes tool here and the new layer will have the nodes. So I'll go back to select. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Then I'll go back and select my old layer. When I hover over it, when I see those crossbars, I can click, it selects it, and I can delete it. So we'll move the new layer back up. It's still selected, so I'm going to click on Path and Linked Offset. Now you see this little grab bar shows up. If I try to drag it and make an offset now, it's going to hop around. I just don't have a lot of control over it, and that's because the snapping is enabled. I'm going to click this top snapping, and I got rid of it. Now I can grab my little grab bar, and I have a lot more control over it. I can make it small, I can make it big. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I think that looks pretty good right there. So I'll go back to the Select tool. Now the offset is its own layer. So once again, I'm going to drag it away. Then I'll go back, select my old layer, and delete it. Now I notice I have a stray mark over here. I could either erase that in this program, or I could contour it out in Cricut Design Space, or I could slice it out in Cricut Design Space. But since I'm not really going to make my project out of this, I'm not too worried about it. So let's go ahead and move on to our project. I'll start by opening Cricut Design Space. New project. Let's go ahead and upload it. I'm going to upload image. I'll browse on my desktop. And here's the image I want right here. So I'll click on Open. It's already a transparent background, so I can just say Save. Now that I have it in my images, I'll click on it and I'll insert it into my project. Now my width is bigger than my height, and I'm limited to about 5 inches wide. So I'm going to go up and change the width, and that will also adjust the height. Since I'm using Infusible Ink, I'll need to make sure that I mirror my image before I cut it. So I'm going to go ahead and say Make It. Again, I need to mirror that. Then after I click Continue, I can select the Infusible Ink transfer sheet. I need to make sure that my fine point blade is in clamp B and that I've mirrored it, which I did. So I'll turn the camera angle around and we'll keep working. Okay, I have my standard grit mat and I have my black Infusible Ink. When you buy this, it comes in this dark tube, and then down inside of it, there's a little package. There it is, little package to keep moisture from getting into the Infusible Ink transfer sheet. And it comes with some butcher paper. And then here's the Infusible Ink. Now it looks brown now, but it really won't be brown when we're done with it. I'm going to go ahead and put the whole sheet on instead of cutting it down. That way I can just cut away exactly what I need and decrease the waste. Now, it is pretty curled up, so it might take a little patience to get this down. The other thing is you want to make sure that your hands are really clean of oils if you're doing this, if you're touching this. And I washed my hands right before I came in here. All right, let's go ahead and load this and see how it cuts. At first, I really hated to weed Infusible Ink, but now I actually kind of enjoy it. And what you do is try to find a place where you can rip it to the edge. Then once you've done that, you can just kind of start pulling around the design. Watch and make sure nothing lifts up. If it does, just set things back down. And then I never use my weeding tool on this because you can very easily scratch the Infusible Ink. So I just fold the paper down and you can see what you need to remove lifts up a little bit and you just pull it off. Now there's a little bit of paper left under there. That's not going to mess up the design because there's no Infusible Ink on that little piece of paper. And if I turn it over, I can read it and make sure it looks good. I've gone ahead and preheated my Easy Press to 385 and I set the time on 40 seconds. Now you're supposed to use a lint ruler. You're supposed to use a lint roller on whatever you're going to put your Infusible Ink on, just to make sure you have all loose fibers and different things out of the way. And then you're supposed to go ahead and preheat whatever you're putting your ink on for 15 seconds. So I'm going to let that get down to 25. Now this is very, very hot, so you don't want to lay your infusible ink on it yet because it could start infusing in the wrong place. So you let this cool off. It says to let it cool off completely. While I'm letting that cool off, I'm going to go ahead and get these wood pieces under it. You see that there's a little bit thicker band around the outside. So what I want to do, and I'm going to put it under my mat, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to have these pieces of wood so that when I push down, the thick part can go down kind of around and I get really good pressure against the top. So I wish these were a little smaller, but they're not, so we'll deal with that. And go ahead and put it under there. Also, to protect your heating mat, you're supposed to put a piece of cardstock under whatever you're pressing. So I'm just going to try to see if I have my wood pieces pretty much in the right place. That feels good. Then it's cooled off enough that I can go ahead and put my design down. All right, I think that looks good. Now I have this heat-resistant tape. I'm going to use just a little bit of it. It's not anything you have to use, but I think it will keep it from shifting around. And then the last thing is you're supposed to put the butcher paper over the top of your design. Now this is a piece I've used before, so I want to make sure that I don't get any color on my design. There's a little bit of pink there. So I'm going to move it down and have the clean part over my design. Go ahead and put my easy press on, start the timer, and then I'm going to give it some firm pressure. Not a ton of pressure, but some firm pressure. I believe the instructions say you don't even need to do that, but I just feel better doing it. Okay, we can go ahead and lift this off. Once again, the instructions tell you to let it cool completely. Now, I'm not that patient, so I don't wait till it's totally cooled off, but I am going to give it some time. Now for the big reveal. Oh, there's my mother's handwriting. That is so special. So, so cute. And then let me show you the back of the transfer sheet. You know you've had pretty good success when you can't see any ink still on there. I truly love that. Thanks again for joining me today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Until the next video, bye-bye.